Groundtrax Northern Off-Road Championship takes in a variety of venues and offers a unique challenge for every round. From mud to dust, smooth to rough, and just about everything in between. And the variety isn't just in the terrain. The vehicles would also be just as varied throughout the season. Round 1 of the championship kicks off at Helmsley in North Yorkshire, and the course this time would be 100% mud and water. So let's get straight out onto the course and see how the crews did on day 1. Day 1 would see some changes to the course. For the first run of the day, the course would take in some of the moorland. Unfortunately, heavy rain in the lead up to the event would make conditions extremely tough, resulting in that section being cut. But with the times for that and the following 2 runs on day 1 all still counting, it will be Richard Copsey and Mark Shaw that lead the way overnight.
Definitely, that moorland were atrocious. It were just bogging in and it wasn't racing, it were just sort of like chewing through, really.
There will be some mixed reactions to the moorland section being cut. And for Luke and John Sagar, it was definitely the right choice. They were still trying to get the settings on the suspension right, and the contrasting conditions of the 2 sections of the course were probably not helping things there. They lie in 2nd place at the end of day 1, leading the way in Class 8.
It were all right. It were a bit rough, but still struggling with a few settings on the suspension, but we're doing all right. So made up with where we are overnight.
Brian Farmer and Richard Rawlinson would end the day with 3rd. They didn't have a good first run and were much happier with the course now. No problems to report. They were in a good position, ready for a push on day 2.
First run were terrible, just too wet and too sloppy, but once they altered the course we found it acceptable and quite fast.
Aston Cox and Becca Clarkson, meanwhile, would be surprised by the position that they held at the end of the opening day. 4th place overall and 2nd in Class 8. It could have been a little higher had it not been for a missed-up screen due to water on the opening stage.
To be honest, we had a couple of problems, but apart from that, the car's going really well, and I'm quite shocked that I'm sitting in 4th position, to be honest.
And no problems for Ben Gill on day 1. He leads the way in Class 9 at this point in the event. He'd be happy with the performance and looking to carry that through into day 2.
It was really good. We just, I think they shouldn't have cut that more out. I think we should have kept that. That were a bit testing, wasn't it? Sorts men front boys.
It's a new car this season for Simon Adams and Ross Walker. The Maverick X3 will be a step up from last year's buggy and, of course, like any new car, will be undergoing modifications as the season went on. First on the list after this round might well be a windscreen. They would also find at the end of the day that the sump guard had been ripped off the car. Thankfully, on the last lap of the day, minimising any damage. 6th place at the end of day 1 would be a good start to the new season in that car. Matt Elvin makes a good start in Class 9. 2nd in the class at the end of the day, just 14 seconds back from Ben Gill in the class lead. And for Dan Lang, it will be a further minute back to 3rd place in the class. The time's not quite as competitive in the class once the moorland section had been cut from the course.
All right for now, yeah. We're obviously losing a lot of power on the moor section, but we seem to be catching it back up a bit now. It's all been missed out and we're back through the woods.
James and Jenny Canterbury bring the new car out for its first event, looking to do some testing and seeing how things handled. Things were going well so far though, with no issues to report, ending the day with 9th place overall and 3rd in Class 8.
Like everyone else, I was pretty glad that the moorland got took out. But this is a brand new car, this one, so it's my first race in it. So it's a bit of a test weekend for me. So
and everything's going well with it?
Everything seems to be going well so far. Touch wood, it carries on that way.
And rounding out the top 10 were James Lofthouse and Ant Emmett. Sadly, a puncture on the opening run would result in losing the tyre by the end, and of course, losing them some valuable time. But they will be back on the pace for the remaining runs of the day. Just taking a quick look outside of our top 10, it will be 5th place in Class 8 for Ian Goodyear. Unfortunately, the time for run 3 will be a minute slower than his previous run, and could have been the difference between 11th overall and 9th at this stage. For Richard Cooper and Andy West, it would be a good run, up to the point that they hit the tree on run 3. They did, though, complete the stage and end the day in 12th place overall. But the Beers would have to wait until the car was repaired, ready for action on day 2. Day 1 would go well for Paul Short. Leading the way in Class 1 by the end of the day, there was a small issue with water getting into the electrics on the first run of the day, but with that section now cut from the course, things were going a lot better. It would also be a good start to the event for Ian Davidson too, leading the way in Class 4, as well as lying in 14th place overall at the end of the first day of competition. George and Jacqueline Bryson were competing in only their 3rd event after making the switch from historic rallying. And what a contrast that switch would turn out to be. Their only issue, though, would be with water on run 1 and the task of trying to dry themselves off afterwards. You didn't get this in the historic rallying, did you?
Yeah, it was good. It was a bit slippy and a bit wetter than what we'd imagined. This was only our 3rd event, so I'm not quite sure how to take things, but yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it.
Unfortunately, Cameron Jones and Sam Fitzpatrick wouldn't have the best of starts to their event, losing the power steering and wipers on the first run of the day. But it was still a better start than their previous event last year at Sweet Lamb. They lie in 16th overall, starting now to climb their way back up the leaderboard now the problems had been sorted.
We lost steering, we lost wipers on first run. It cost us a little, 20 minutes, but we started to catch up. It's a new car to us, so we've not raced for a year and a half. So we're getting there.
And Steve Hill and Matt Walker will be another crew to suffer with broken wipers on the opening run. It would cost them around 5 minutes while they tried to navigate around the course without them. They end the day with 17th overall as a result and 5th place in Class 9. Ken Powell wouldn't have the best of starts to his event. Run 1 would see him grind to a halt as the car went into the moorland section. He would sadly suffer a maximum on that opening run, but would be back out on the pace on the next runs of the day, ready for a big fight on day 2, no doubt.
It was eventful. It's the first time out in the car. We had an issue because it was very wet with the windscreen wiper, which came off, so we got a maximum on the first run. We're taking it nice and steady.
And for James Watts and Tom Lacey, the problem would be a little less mechanical. They ran out of fuel on the opening run, taking a maximum. Indeed, problems too for Darryl Ruthven and Graham Fernley would see them take a maximum on the opening run with electrical failure. Mike Wilson and Simon Goodwin were out to compete on their first event with the club. And we're loving it so far, it has to be said. What the car lacked in ground clearance and power, they certainly made up for in determination. Meanwhile, for Billy Cruikshank and Grant Miller, there will be problems towards the end of the first day, going off the road, unable to get going again. They take a maximum then on the final run of the day, lying 3rd in Class 4. So with day 1 complete, it's Richard Copsey out in front. The times behind, though, looking close. It was all to play for on day 2. Coverage of the Groundtrax Northern Off-Road Championship is brought to you by our championship sponsors. On to day 2 then, and over the morning's runs, there wouldn't be any change to the lead. Richard Copsey continues to hold the advantage there by almost 2 minutes. Just 1 puncture this morning would be the only issue for the pair.
Yeah, it's been going okay, yeah. It's rutted out there pretty bad. There's a lot of tree roots exposed. We've just had just 1 puncher.
There would be change in 2nd place, though. Brian Farmer and Richard Rawlinson moving up to take that position over the morning's 3 runs. Happy with the times and trying to chase down Copsey up ahead. A bit of red mist needed today, perhaps.
Oh, it's going great. We're loving it out there now. It's really rough, really fast. Just try to catch this man in front of us now. But we're putting in reasonably similar times. There's some real off-roading.
Sadly for Luke and John Sagar, a blown diff on the first run of the day would cause some valuable lost time, putting them down into 3rd. It was still a good position to be in though. The morning would now just be spent fixing the car and catching up on their runs. Aston Cox and Becca Clarkson were still having a good run. A good battle in the class, and indeed in the overall results was starting to unfold. Times behind were a little further away as well, so it was just about keeping it in one piece for the afternoon and getting to that finish. And eyes on the finish, there would be around 5 minutes separating the top 4 from the rest of the results. But it would be Paul Short leading the way in that part of the leaderboard. The times keeping him in that 5th place and leading Class 1 at this stage as well. Things were still going well for James and Jenny Canterbury. The car was standing up to the calls very well. It would only be a couple of small mistakes running wide that caused a couple of punctures for the pair, but they end the morning with 6th place overall. And things were going much better now for Cameron Jones and Sam Fitzpatrick. They were putting some good times in and moving back up the leaderboard after their Run 1 misfortunes, lying in 7th place now and leading the way in Class 6. Another man moving the right way on the leaderboard as the times slowly started to improve was Ian Goodyear. He ends the morning with 8th place overall, 4th in Class 8. Meanwhile, the course was taking its toll on the car of James Lofthouse and Ant Emmett. Ongoing repairs and broken wheels would be slowing them a little, and that would pretty much be the theme of their day, but they would still be lying in 9th place by the end of the morning.
Not so bad, just dealing with the ongoing repairs.
What's been going wrong?
Just smashing wheels, and it's just getting so rough out there now, it's starting to take its toll on the car and us.
Rounding out our top 10 would be Ben Gill. Sadly, a maximum on the final run of the morning would put him down the order a little, having to pull over on the stage when the steering wheel broke on the car. Just outside our top 10 then, in 11th overall, were Steve Hill and Matt Walker. Things going well for the pair. They weren't checking any times, just wanting to get to that finish. The car only just finished the Wednesday before the event, so this was, in effect, the shakedown. Another crew testing the car as the season got underway. George and Catriona Bryson will be looking towards the finish now as well. They get through the morning stages in one piece, deciding that the pace was probably about right. Any faster and mistakes could be made. It was discretion, the better part of valour today. They lie in 12th place overall now. And another man struggling with the conditions was Dan Lang. The course rutting out badly now, so that would mean he actually got stuck at one point, having to take a maximum on run 6. Things were going much better though for James Watts and Tom Lacey. Now that they'd worked out the fuel consumption of the new car, they make it round without any major issues and end the morning with 14th overall. They planned to keep that pace to the end of the event, the finish now in sight. No change for Peter Bauer in this morning's runs, remaining 2nd in Class 1 at this stage and 15th place on our overall leaderboard. Bauer would be just over a minute ahead of Paul Wilde at this stage. 16th overall and 7th place in Class 8 for Paul now. And gearbox issues at the end of the first day of competition meant a long night fixing the car for Darryl Ruthven and Graham Fernley. But they get the car sorted and back out for day 2 in the true spirit of clubman competition, lying in 17th place overall for now. More frustration this morning. This will be the last we'd see of Simon Adams. Water getting into the belt housing over the weekend had weakened it, finally giving up on run 5. The decision was made to pull over and call it a day for this event, rather than fix it and risk any damage as a result. Mark Walker would suffer a bent Panhard rod in the morning, but with that fixed, he could now catch up and end the morning with 19th place overall.
Yeah, steady morning. Bent a Panhard rod and put a new one of them on, but yeah, hopefully we'll get through to the end of the day, hopefully with no more problems.
No problems for Jason Noakes this morning. He was finding it rough, but that's racing. He lies in 20th place at this stage. And no change in position or pace for Michael Wilson and Simon Goodwin. They continue their battle with the course in the Freelander, but still enjoying themselves with every mile throughout the day. So after a tough and grueling event so far, we have just 3 more runs remaining here at Helmsley, and it's no change for Richard Copsey. But there will be a battle going on for the remaining podium places going into the final leg of the event. Coverage of the Groundtrax Northern Off-Road Championship is brought to you by our championship sponsors. On to that final leg of the event then, and it will be 20th overall for Billy Cruikshank and Grant Miller at the finish. It wasn't an event without its problems, including a close call on one of the final runs of the day, but they make it. For Jason Noakes, it will be 19th place at the finish, ending the event with 9th place in Class 8 too. And Peter Bauer would end the event with 2nd place in Class 1, as well as 18th on the overall leaderboard. No more problems for Mark Walker means he gets to the finish with 17th place, 5th in Class 9. Sadly, Ben Gill would have problems, struggling with some issues on the car, preventing him from completing all of the runs. He takes a couple of maximums and ends the event with 16th place overall. No more problems though, and indeed, no accidents for Darrell Ruthven and Graham Fernley in the afternoon on day 2. They make it to the finish with some good times, ending the event with 15th place overall. Paul Wild would have a steady run in the final part of the event to maintain a finish, ending the event with 14th place, 7th in Class 8. And George and Jacqueline Bryson get to the end of their 3rd ever event in the car. The switch from rallying going well, even if it was a bit of a bigger challenge. They will be happy with 13th place though, looking forward to more rounds this season. Dan Lang manages to avoid getting stuck anywhere else this afternoon, ending the event with 12th place overall, 3rd in the class. A good end to a weekend of mixed fortunes for Lang. I think you could safely say the first race in the championship for James Watts and Tom Lacey could be counted as a success, minus the round 1 fuel hiccup. They end the event with 11th place overall, taking 2nd place in the class as well. And rounding out our top 10, finishing a minute ahead of them on the results overall and in the class, was Steve Hill and Matt Walker. A quick look at the times before the final run confirmed that they could get a good result, so a push was made and the pair walked away with a Class 9 victory this weekend. After a tough weekend, it wasn't all plain sailing in the final runs either for James Lofthouse and Ant Emmett. A fuel pump failure on run 8 would see them limping the car over the finish line, but that result overall would be good, 9th place to end the event. James and Jenny Canterbury certainly couldn't have asked for any better a test for the new car. Not only did it all go to plan, but the result of 8th place overall would give them confidence going into the rest of the season. Ian Goodyear, meanwhile, would have a good run to 7th place overall, taking 3rd in the class as well, and pushing for some good times through those final runs. Sometimes almost pushing a little too hard, you might say. And it will be a good run for Paul Short here at the first round of the series, ending the event with 6th place, the Class 1 victory. He's certainly been pushing all weekend, and the times showed that. Cameron Jones and Sam Fitzpatrick have a good comeback throughout the day to end the event with 5th place overall. A good end to what started out pretty badly. A little bit of body damage towards the end of the final run will be the only issue to report for the pair on day 2. Frustration for Luke and John Sagar. They would slip back from that 3rd place they'd held coming into the afternoon, ending the event with 4th. This incident with a tree on one of the final runs of the day certainly didn't help their cause. There may only have been a few seconds lost, but they miss out on that podium place by just 7 seconds. But that does show just how close it has been at this first round. So if you've been following the leaderboard, you will know that that means for Aston Cox and Becca Clarkson, it will be 3rd. A great podium position that they would have taken at the start of the event. The times had been good all weekend and the car stood up well to the tough conditions. For Brian Farmer and Richard Rawlinson, despite their best attempts, there would be no catching the leaders. They'd have to settle for 2nd place, but that was certainly a result they could be happy with. They end the event 1 minute ahead of Cox by the finish. So that means that it was victory for Richard Copsey and Mark Shaw, getting off to the best possible start in the championship. A good clean run all weekend with just a few minor issues would ensure that win, and by a comfortable margin too.
Yeah, it couldn't have gone better really. We led on Saturday, but there were only 3 runs. It got cut short, and then on Sunday today we've set some good times. So the car's run really well. Yeah, thanks.
It's been a good event. We've come 2nd overall, which is a fantastic result for the beginning of the season. As I said before, we try to catch Mark Copsey up, but time we're against is TikTok.
Yeah, it's been really good. So the first run on Saturday was very wet and slippy, a bit splishy, splashy, washy and whatnot. But apart from that, it's all been good. The car's been spot on. Service crew have looked after the car for me well, and especially Dad. And yeah, I'm just happy with the result. Gone hard, and that's about it, really.
So confirmation of the win there for Richard Copsey here at round 1, and that close battle for the podium places just below it. The championship points after round 1, of course, reflect that final result this weekend, with last year's champion Anthony Jackson also taking maximum points for clerk of the course duties on this weekend's event. Coverage of the Groundtrax Northern Off-Road Championship is brought to you by our championship sponsors. Thank you for watching.